So I'm heading down south about 3 hours from where I live in Salt Lake City to take a look at this rear end that I think is going to work for the truck. And just thinking, I do live in a very beautiful part of the world. There's still quite a bit of snow in the mountains here in Salt Lake. And it looks very beautiful out there. Okay, I'm really excited. I did pick up the rear axle. It's exactly what I was looking for. Let me show it to you. So this is out of from what I can tell, all the dimensions look right and everything looks right on it. This is a Disassembly out of a 91 Dodge diesel truck. It was put into a Ford temporarily, and then I guess the guy pulled it out and put something else under it. So it's got some extra mounts for the shocks. It's got some shock mounts welded on, some other things welded on. But yeah, I'm gonna go through, completely rebuild it. Well, rebuild the hubs, cut and grind all this off, paint it up, make it look beautiful, make some new brake lines. You know, just it'll look gorgeous when I'm done with it. First things first though, I should probably take the differential cover the back off and to see what it looks like inside. Yeah, I know it probably would have been smart to do that before I bought it, but yeah, let's make sure there's nothing that is surprising inside there before we get started. Well, the teeth all look really good. There is some rust in here though. I think it's been sitting in the water a little bit. But all the teeth in here look really nice. All right, let's do a little bit more inspection. So things don't usually turn out exactly the way you plan, and that's the case here. As I pulled this axle apart, generally things look really good. Both spindles look great. The axles look great, and in fact the gears show very little wear at all. I can't really see. I cleaned off some of the gears, I've turned them around quite a bit. I really don't see any wear on these at all. But there is quite a bit of rust in the inside there. So to get that out, the proper way to get it out, and the water must have got in, mixed with the oil and caused some rust inside there. So I'm going to remove the gear set, take that opportunity to replace the carrier bearings, the pinion bearings, then get it all reset up. So that'll be a good opportunity to get everything cleaned out in there. So get it cleaned out, put everything back in. I did notice something really interesting though. So these are set up with this nut like this, and on top of the nut inside the keyway is this little clip that goes in to stop the nut from turning. Now if you watched my previous video, you saw how I had the outer bearing disintegrated, just pretty much exploded on that one, and that nut was all chewed up. But the other side, it had the clip in there, the nut was in the right position, and all was good. On this side of the axle, that clip was in the nut, everything was as tight as I expected it to be, and everything looked really good, and the bearing looked really nice. On this side though, that clip was missing. The nut was loose, but there was no end play. There was no play at all that I could sense before I took the nut off, but the nut was pretty much hand tight on there. It's pretty easy to get off, and I wouldn't have thought much about it, except when I look at this bearing was pretty close to having the same issue as the one that exploded in my existing axle. So what this is leading me to believe is that retaining mechanism is a problem in these on these axles. So I'm going to use a different type of nut when I put this back together, and I'll show that when I get there. You know, everything on this is pretty dirty and rusty, but we'll get all that cleaned up as I tear it all apart. These drums have quite a bit of wear inside, so I'll actually be replacing these drums with the drums that are currently on the truck. But I'll be separating the hubs from the drums, replacing the studs on here, and yeah, going from there. So it's going to be a bigger job than I expected, but yeah, that's why I do this, to have fun in the garage, and so hopefully this will make it more interesting. So before I take this differential apart, I thought I'd check the backlash. There's very little wear on the gears, so my assumption was that the backlash should be within spec. And I'm just curious to see what it looks like before I take it apart. So I've got my little contraption here to hold it in place, and I've clamped the pinion so it can't move at all. So it's solidly clamped, and if I move this back and forth, there's about 18 thousandths backlash, and the spec calls for 5 to 8 thousandths. So a little bit more backlash than expected, but it looks like these gears ran really well. My assumption is when I put it back in with the same shims, it's probably going to be the same as it is now. But anyway, I thought that would be interesting. So when reassembling these gears, the carrier bearing caps have to go back on in the same spot and the same orientation. So I'm just going to use the marks that they put on it originally for this purpose. So you can see that right there, there's a W here and a W here in that orientation. It'd be nice if they had different letters, but this side also has a W, but it's in a different orientation. So there's a W and there's a W. I might put a second mark on them, but also for my purposes here, probably this video will take care of it, because I've got now the video with all the other numbers and stuff on there. So that'll make it pretty easy. But anyway, there's always, you have to go back on the same orientation. That was on tight. So we saw a little bit more backlash when I measured that than I expected. And here might be the reason. So there was more backlash than I expected. So the whole assembly needed to push this way, to tighten it up. Now I was going to add some shims, but if you take a look here, one of the shims is damaged. So this whole assembly is probably a little bit looser than it needed to be. So I'll just need to get another shim, or actually I'm thinking about taking the other axle apart. Maybe I'll just take some shims out of there. But anyway, that's interesting that that shim exploded. All right, well, it's a good thing I'm doing all this. Well, that was looser than it should have been, I think, because we had those shims. Yeah, I'll take a look at that later. But we had at least one shim that was damaged. All right, very cool. Yeah, that wasn't supposed to be that easy. That was supposed to be in there tighter. Planning to get the air hammer out to knock the pinion out and then probably video that, but it actually came out just with me pushing it out. So here it is. It's a little loose. You have to figure out what's going on with that. But anyway, there's the yoke, and here's the pinion. All right, that came out pretty easily as well. Where are the shims on this one? Okay, maybe they're not in that location. I'll take a look at the diagram. All right, that came out nice. All right, that one's out. So here's the current state of the axle that I'm planning to put in the truck. And then this morning I pulled the axle that is in the truck out. And I'm just checking the condition of the gears in this. And if you remember the backlash, I think I'd have to look back, but I think it was like 18 on the other gears. So I set this up to check the backlash. And again, I've got it clamped down the bottom there so the pinion can't move. But the backlash on this one looks to be 9.5, 9 to 9.5 thousandths, which is in spec. The other one we found had some shims that had gone pretty much disintegrated on it, which I think had moved the carrier this way on the previous one, and that had opened up the backlash a little bit. So I don't know, we're going to pull these gears out. If these gears seem to be in better shape than the ones in that axle, I'll probably replace everything from this. So the gears, the pinion, the shims, you know, obviously replace the bearings, but put all those in that housing. All right, so you saw how easy that went. I wasn't sure how it would work. I'd never used one of these before, so I didn't show the setup as I was learning myself, but I thought on this one I would show how I did it. So the directions say to put the race on. And then you need to put this tool in whichever direction it seems to set in there. This one doesn't set in nicely. This side sets in really nicely here, so that your rod here has something to press on. Then you put this part of the tool over here. And then you got to choose this kit. This I got off of Amazon. It's a Vavor brand, I guess, kit. It comes with lots of different size clamshells. I assume I'm going to use a different one when I do the pinion bearing here in a minute. But for the big one, you got to get, for the Disassembly, I was doing some reading, you got to get the kit that has the bigger clamshells, because it comes with, this one comes with 3 different sizes. So the size you need is the big one, and they say to adjust the bottom one here so it just sits on the race, and then the top one you adjust so that it clamps on or it fits just snugly. Now it's in the right size because I just did the other side. I'll make it just a little snugger. Yeah, I was really impressed how it came off. There was no damages on the shims at all. So that's really cool. The other thing that I should probably mention at this point too is I've looked at both gear sets. The one that came in the axle that I purchased, and then the one that was in the axle in the truck. I've decided to use the ones in the axle in the truck. They look like they have less wear and are in better shape. So those are the bearings that I'm removing off the one that was in the truck. Then this little guy here, this just holds the clamshells in place, so it just goes on finger tight. And then we hope it goes as well as the last one. Let me just make sure you're in the frame. It might be easier if I maybe turned it up a little bit. You're good, you'll see it. All right, then you use your impact. And hopefully this one comes off just as well. Yeah, very nice. All right, let's do the pinion. So we do the same thing that we did for the carrier. Put the race on, and then find the clamshell that works. And I looked through the 3 different clamshells, and then they do have different openings on each side. And it looks like this one is going to be the optimal size. Fits over nicely. Okay. Now we don't need the extender because the rod is going to be able to hit the top of the shaft there. So we'll just loosen up the rod until it just sits on top. Okay. And let's do the same thing that we did last time and adjust. Well, let's make sure. This is sitting, the bottom one is sitting, putting some pressure on. Okay, there you go. That's putting some pressure on. Okay, good. Now we just adjust that top one until it fits inside the clamshell nicely. Well, that seems, it's maybe just a little bit looser. Okay. Oh, I guess not. A little looser. There we go. That's all we in. Almost. There we go. All right, a little bit of play. Just bring it up a little bit. Yep, that's pretty good. Okay. Do the same thing with the collar. Hold everything in place. Okay, so that's what it looks like. All right, see what happens. Very nice. So before I reinstall the carrier and pinion with the new bearings, I'm going to clean this axle up a bit. First thing that I'm doing is the previous owner had installed this on a Ford frame, and so they put some mounts on here for the shocks. So I need to get those off, get it cleaned up. This side, I've done as much as I can with cutting them off. So I'll now be grinding them down flat to the axle tube, and then I'll do the same on the other side. And then this also has been painted before, so there's some thick black paint on here. So I'm gonna actually grind all of the paint off, clean it all up, and then paint it. Right now I'm thinking about getting some of that Eastwood, what's it called? But the rust inhibiting paint that they have, they've got a new version of it that's supposed to compete with POR 15. So I'm gonna give that a shot and see how that works on here. And clean it up inside. So get it all cleaned up and painted, and then start to reassemble. So that's the plan. So I have cut off and ground down all the mounts that the previous owner had put on this axle for the installation that he had for his Ford truck. And I pretty much sanded down all the old paint off of it, cleaned it off with some brake cleaner, and it's ready to paint. And I'm gonna give this stuff a shot. This Eastman Rust Encapsulator Plus stuff. I've used POR 15 quite a bit in the past, but I thought I'd try something new. So I finished painting up the axle. That Eastman paint, rust encapsulator paint, is really easy to use. It goes on nicely, has great coverage. I didn't use very much at all for this axle. And we'll see how well it lasts, but man, it was really easy to use. So I was very happy with how easy it was to use. This is 24 hours later, and it's pretty hard. So now I'm going to start reassembling the gears in the housing. So I picked up this Timken rebuild kit, and it looks like it's got everything I'm going to need. Comes with some gasket maker. I've got some green stuff that I've used in the past that I might use instead of this, but we'll see. Gear marking compound. Kind of cute. It comes with a little bit of thread locker as well. And then it's got all the bearings and races. What I was really interested in, it's also got the seal, the pinion seal, but it's also got all the shims as well. And a new pinion nut. So all Timken bearings. Pretty excited to start getting it put back together.